and some postcards I see that were delivered to us today, encouraging us to adopt the mayor's resolution on climate change. And I am one of those people who believes that human activity has caused some change in our climate patterns. I know there's a lot of controversy, a lot of disagreement about it, and it seems to be science versus corporate profit in my mind. And I've been a student of earth science for almost 50 years. So the first class I took as a freshman in college was geology, and I've been studying it ever since. And I've been reading articles about climate change and the effect of burning fossil fuels and fracking and all kinds of things that affect our natural environment, about which I care a lot. Whether you believe in long-term global climate change or not, I think two things need to be seriously considered by our council. One is that we need to take care of the environment for future generations. We may not see it happening today, but our grandchildren might feel detrimentally affected by what we're doing today. So we have a human and moral responsibility to look out for the future. And secondly, some of the things that the mayor's resolution asks us to do under the category of local action, we are already doing. And this is merely a statement that the city, as a government, is committed to continuing to do those things. Our Water Sense program, we're changing out light bulbs. I think we are considering fuel economy when we change out our fleet vehicles. If you go down the list, and I think the council, I hope, has read the mayor's resolution in detail and thought about all the things that we are doing. We are making a lot of progress, but this is a statement to the rest of the nation that Prescott as a community is committed to doing what it can do within its jurisdiction, within its authority, to contribute to keeping the climate from changing. And I know there are a lot of folks here who were here a month ago, but there are some new folks here, and I would hope that the mayor would allow public comment. There's a presentation, I think, prepared for that. So I personally would like to hear what you have to say.
Any other questions, comments from the council? I'll go ahead and make a few comments. First of all, I was at a mayor's conference in January, back in Washington, D.C. And our guest speaker one night was Mayor Bill de Blasio. And during his speech, he said that it was basically a call to arms, that all the mayors needed to make sure that they opposed everything that our president-elect at that time, it was just before the actual inauguration, that all the mayors should oppose everything he's doing, particularly on immigration and climate control. As far as he was concerned, it was important that all the mayors opposed him on anything he was doing on many things, but those are the two that were the most important to him. It was interesting to me that we were not doing this because it was a need to protect our planet and our environment. It was because it was an opportunity to oppose our president-elect. And I will tell you that I don't agree with being any part of that kind of political nonsense. The other thing is, I've got a statement here that I'm entering into the record, and it could be, I'll read a little bit of it to you. It's by a Richard Lindzen, Emeritus Professor of Atmospheric Sciences at MIT. And he says basically there's two groups of scientists that are looking at this. One are scientists that mostly believe that recent climate change is primarily due to man's burning of fossil fuels, oil, coal, and natural gas. This releases CO2, carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and they believe this might eventually dangerously heat the planet. Group 2 is made up of scientists who don't see this as an especially serious problem. This is the group I belong to, according to this professor. We're usually referred to as skeptics. We note that there have been many reasons why climate changes, the sun, clouds, ocean, orbital variations of the Earth, as well as a variety of other inputs. None of these is fully understood, and there is no evidence that CO2 emissions are the dominant factor. But actually, there is much agreement between these two groups of scientists. The following are some points of agreement. The climate is always changing, number one. Number two, CO2 is a greenhouse gas without which life on Earth is not possible, but adding it to the atmosphere should lead to some warming. Atmospheric levels of CO2 have been increasing since the end of the Little Ice Age in the 19th century. Over this period, the last 2 centuries, the global mean temperature has increased slightly and erratically by about 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit or 1 degree Celsius, but only since the 1960s has man's greenhouse emissions been sufficient to play a role. Number 5, given the complexity of science, no confident prediction about future global mean temperature or its impact can be made. The IPCC, and that's a group from United Nations International Panel of Climate Change, Working Group 1, acknowledged in its own 2007 report that the long-term prediction of few climate states is not possible. So I think, as we go forward, we have to be very careful in how we look at this. We had many people that sent us emails, notes, things of that nature, indicating that they felt that this was something that was going to be bordering a catastrophe in the future if we didn't do something about it. I, for one, am one that still feels that this is still open to considerable more science that has to be developed on this issue. Is there any other comments? I've got one from Councilwoman Orr.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I too, like Councilwoman Wilcox, believe I'm a good steward of the environment, consider myself to be an environmentalist. I have a son that makes sure that I go along those lines. However, I do not feel that we need to make any additional steps. We approved a general plan, our citizens approved a general plan in 2015 that addresses many of the issues. We have been noted as being #1 for clean air in the nation by the American Lung Association. We're number 13 for the happiest and healthiest. I think that we have done, as we've just heard, an amazing job with our water here in the city of Prescott. We have the night sky. There's so many things that we do in our community for our environment that I really feel that doing anything else would be redundant, and I think it's completely unnecessary. So I guess I think it's more of a political statement, and I just really would be concerned about and I talked to many people this weekend about this, about what kinds of regulations or requirements might come down from above because we sign onto something like this. I really don't see any advantage to the city of Prescott.
Councilwoman Wilcox.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to respond to one point. Just because one mayor in one city made this a federal election issue doesn't mean that the city of Prescott has to look at it that way. This U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement was actually presented in 2014, long before the presidential election, and our current president even decided to run for president. So I think we have to look at our community. What can we do to make a commitment for future generations? It's all right here. I don't think it's superfluous or redundant. It's a commitment, it's a statement. We belong to a country, and we have over 1,000 cities that have signed on to this agreement. It seems reasonable to me. It's nothing beyond our capacity.
Councilman Shiska.
Thanks, Mayor. Gene, I appreciate your stand. Billy, I understand. The shame for me is that it's become politicized. Is some of the stuff right to do? Absolutely. But the truth of the matter is that it all costs money. For Gene to say, oh gee, we can just pass it and smile and go down the road, I didn't see that in that piece of paper. I saw, you will do this, and you will do this. And I'll tell you what, we can't even pay for police and fire on a consistent basis to fully fund those things. It's going to cost money, folks. You want to talk about regressive? This thing is regressive. So, you know, as much as I agree with the tenets of it, and as a person, I think it's my responsibility as a citizen to do this stuff. But I don't think it's the responsibility of the city to act as a politician and say, yeah, we'll do that, and then kind of walk away and kick the can down the road. So, you know, while I agree with some of the tenets, I can't agree with the city committing itself to this.
Any other questions, comments from the council? Okay, I'll take comments from the public. We'll take 5 people for 2 minutes. Step on up, first one. Go ahead, whoever wants to come on up.
Can I address that for a moment, Mr. Mayor, because I was one of the presenters. I mean, if need be, I guess this will be my 2 minutes. But what I'd like to see, since we collected, and I have comments that I think would be valuable, arising out of some conversations I had with Councilwoman Orr, the radio station discussion between Stephen Cook and Councilman Blair, which I think were a great reminder for me. But the point I want to make is limiting comment on this issue for 2 minutes to 5 people. I've got additional signatures to those that I submitted last at the presentation. We've got a room full of people who are interested, I think, in sharing some comments, who are your neighbors and citizens on this issue that is important, I think, for you to hear.
Both sides are wrong. This is an issue about science. This is an issue about making good public policy judgments based on the facts. As far as the city's concerned, I want to disagree with Councilman Siska. This wouldn't be expensive at all, and you can look to see a great local example would be Sacred Heart Church, which is making a 10% ROI on their investment in solar photovoltaics and LED lighting and energy efficient retrofits in their church. This is phenomenal. Much of that was financed by the company that installed it. There are some options here that I think the city hasn't explored. Agreed, you've done this. Prescott's a pretty well-run city. I think you guys should be proud of that, and I know that, and we respect that. You can do a little better. This is something you need to look into. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next.
There seem to be several compelling reasons to support the adoption of the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement. The dire warnings of the majority of the scientific community, and I'm tempted to say the overwhelming majority of the scientific community, supported by objective and informed voices of people like Pope Francis, who has no political axe to grind, are trying to awaken the world to the needs of preserving and protecting our environment. Those of us who have lived in the Prescott area for many years have seen changes that have not always been respectful and protective of the beauty of our world. But even from a practical point of view, the Mayor's agreement economically makes good sense. The adoption of clean energy policies is a money saver. Here in Prescott, Sacred Heart Church and School have demonstrated this beyond reasonable doubt. Gene Murphy the business manager, has developed a program which included the installation of 622 solar panels, LED lights, and other improvements that have made Sacred Heart School completely energy independent and earned it the distinction of being the most eco-friendly school in the nation. This program has reduced the annual utility bill by 2/3, has cut the annual carbon dioxide
You got 30
output
seconds. You got
by
30
more than
seconds.
200 tons,
You got 30 seconds.
and water consumption by more than 50,000 gallons. Financially and environmentally, the mayor's agreement is a win-win plan for our future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
I'm Steve Cook. In cooperation with Councilwoman Wilcox, I was led to believe there's a possibility I could have 5 minutes to provide a visual component to this discussion with some slides that I've prepared. If you'll make an exemption to the 2-minute limit, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Well, we did have a presentation about a month ago. It was for 5 minutes. I let it go at 8 minutes. Are you going to give us any
This is
information that's different from what we
specifically
got?
to address the objectives that arose subsequent to
Are you going
that.
to give us any information that's different from the presentation that was
Yes.
given a month ago?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes.
All right, we get this going. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. 4 weeks ago, I urged you to endorse this agreement. Today, I'll address 4 concerns I've heard you express and do this in the context of discussing 2 trends. First, I thank you and applaud the Prescott General Plan. Seems endorsing the mayor's agreement logically follows from that plan, which is built on sustainability. I know at least a couple of you see it as redundant, that is endorsing this plan. Another objection that we've heard expressed pretty eloquently involved partisan political remarks made by a prominent big city mayor. Yes, these remarks are upsetting, but note the U.S. Conference of Mayors is a nonpartisan organization. So what's this group about? The short answer is jobs, which remain a big part of their mission. Trend number 1 is a jobs creation trend. 50 years ago, the solar energy industry did not exist. Today, solar, wind, and energy efficiency sectors employ millions of Americans. Job creation in this area is growing fast. Would you believe solar employs many more people than the much older coal industry? I was a bit skeptical when I saw this chart last week, so I sought out the source of the data. It comes from the U.S. Department of Energy study, which also reports that for electricity generation, solar employs more people than coal, oil, and gas combined. And the energy efficient sector and solar employment are going fast. The former was predicted to have a 9% growth rate higher than any other sector. Solar, as this study suggests, as this story suggests, is growing nearly as fast. It notes corporate America is embracing sustainability, that 46% of large firms have hired additional workers to address such issues in the past 2 years. The world's largest employer, Walmart, is very ambitious in using solar and improving energy efficiency. As this story suggests, why? I'd say that Walmart, folks down at Sacred Heart Parish, who look to save $1.5 million over 25 years, and millions of Americans are predominantly driven by saving money with the types of cost-effective investments that the U.S. Mayor's Agreement promotes. Consider a third concern. Endorsing this agreement will saddle Prescott with more regulations. It won't. There's nothing in the resolution that says this. We will expect you to set up a study group of volunteer citizens to recommend possible cost-effective actions where cost-effective implies avoiding costly and time-consuming actions, regulations. The second trend is global warming. From a baseline of roughly 50 years ago, average global temperatures have climbed nearly 1 degree Celsius. Last month, I used this slide linking rising CO2 and average global temperatures. To those who object, I would say, okay, let's read the handwriting on the wall and consider where this trend, whatever it is, whatever its cause, may lead. Note the steadily upward trend of the last 50 years in this plot of global temperatures. Many think that greenhouse gas mitigation measures can keep temperature gains below 2 degrees and serious climate impacts can be avoided. By the end of 2016, our planet was about 1.4 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Assuming no mitigation, we extrapolate this trend out to the year 2120 and then 2185. We see the 2-degree threshold is exceeded. Why do I pick these distant years? Well, it's not inconceivable that my own grandchildren might be alive in 2120 and their grandchildren likely in 2185. Trend 2 continuing signals our efforts of sustainability have failed, and I fear for them. If temperatures rise by 5 degrees, we enter the apocalyptic realm where feedbacks take over, where the continued existence of all that primitive life forms is endowed. This is sobering. After a species' long history, poor choices by this and the next generation could doom us to extinction. So let's end on a lighthearted note. Here's a cover your rear end strategy for today's leaders. By showing good business sense, investing tax dollars wisely in job creating solar and energy efficiency, by getting on the trend number 1 bandwagon, you protect yourself against future charges that you ignored, scary possibilities raised by trend number 2 and did nothing.
30 seconds.
Is this resolution redundant? I think not. By endorsing it, you'll embrace nearly 900 concerned citizens who signed petitions. Show you recognize that public participation is good governance. You'll please others by promoting jobs that make sense for Arizona and honor future generations. Thank you for valuing sustainability in managing our great city.
Thank you. Next. You're the last one.
I'm Dean
Number
Romanson,
5.
and I live over on Merritt Street. Just for the people who are into sustainability and all that, well, first let me throw in, I'm the only one who was at every single general plan meeting, so I was involved in developing that sustainability part of it. We all felt that it was a good thing. None of us thought we needed to join on with some convention of mayors or anything. My household uses less than 1,000 gallons of water a month, significantly less. We've replaced all but 2 light bulbs in the house with LEDs because I don't have a convenient way to replace the last 2 that we barely ever use. So I'm into conserving energy. I'm into saving water. I don't water the plants outside. I do all this stuff without agreeing to the convention of mayors. My understanding is that this agreement would also commit us to supporting that the United States reduce their output to 1970 levels and support the Kyoto Protocol as it required the United States to significantly reduce its carbon dioxide emissions. That costs money. A group of people getting together for a study group, guys, you can do that without this. But you're figuring if we agree to this, we have to do it. I feel that government is best which governs least, and by not committing ourselves to this agreement, we can do it all, but we're not saying that we have to. Thank you.
Could I
Thank
have
you.
30 seconds?
I'm sorry.
Could I have 30 seconds?
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is John Lutz. I've been a Whiskey Row businessman for 35 years.
I also graduated from NAU School of Forestry in 1978, at which I was taught the very same principles of human effects on climate change that this agreement would support. And I would urge you to support this agreement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all we're gonna take. Thank you for coming and giving us, your opportunity to listen and, also to, provide as many emails. I can tell you, I think we probably got at least 35 to 40 emails. At least I did. I don't know about anybody else. And I think it's fairly clear that many people here today expressed a lot of what we saw in those emails. So at this point, I think we need to move on. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 4382-1591.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Apparently the motion fails for a lack of a second.